When it comes to switchblades, there are very few names in the industry that can compete with ProTech. Quality materials, precision machining, and top-of-the-line engineering are all aspects that makes them stand out from their competition. But what really sets them apart is that if you ask them what's new, they always have something new to show you. My name is James Allen, and I'm the host of The Knife Life. But today, I'm going to be doing an exclusive video for Blade HQ on the history of ProTech, where they started, how they became today's craftsmen, and where they're going. Let's get into it. The story of ProTech starts with a completely different company. Ross Cutlery was established in 1930 by Mr. Ross and largely serviced industrial and commercial needs. Butchers, barbers, and anyone in Los Angeles who used a blade professionally would take their blades to Ross Cutlery for sharpening services. Ross was one of the few companies that was able to service special niches such as straight razors and ceramic blades. In 1962, Ross Cutlery was purchased by brothers Alan and Richard Wattenberg, the father and uncle of ProTech's founder, Dave Wattenberg. Dave spent many weekends and after-school hours helping out around the family business and learning the ropes of the knife industry. Ross Cutlery had display cases of blades of all shapes and varieties, but the automatic knives were really the ones that drew Dave's attention. Even though he would get a knife from time to time for his efforts in the shop, he was never permitted by his parents to have an auto. These experiences would form the groundwork for ProTech. In spite of his early upbringing, Dave didn't originally intend to be part of the knife industry. He actually started off as an educator. Dave went to college in Colorado and started teaching at Skimmer Middle School in Denver. Funds were tight as a teacher, so he ended up starting a side gig selling knives at gun shows. This company was called The Finer Points and dealt in the resale of name brands such as Spyderco, Benchmade, and so on. The problem with the gun shows was the large amount of competition there. Finer Points wasn't the only knife dealer in town. Dave noticed that two things seemed to sell out the fastest and had the least competition. Those were the automatic knives and custom knives. These became the specialty of the Finer Points at the knife and gun shows, and Dave developed good relations with a variety of custom knife makers selling their goods. Eventually, the knife business became more lucrative than teaching, and Dave moved back to California. Over time, his primary problem evolved into an issue of running out of stock at shows, and it became a personal pet peeve of his. So in order to counteract this, he decided to start making his own knives. He created a design, had a Colorado machine shop manufacture the components, and then sat down with his father and assembled all of the knives on his kitchen table. The blades were, of course, naturally sharpened at Ross Cutlery. The name of that first model? The Runt. The Runt was the model that kicked off ProTech in 1999 and started it on the pathway to success. But you wouldn't think that due to its small and unassuming size. But that's the reason why it was such a hit. Dave had elected to make switchblades since they were what sold the best, but California law restricted the carry of any switchblade to a length of 2 inches. So that's what he made. ProTech was really the only one that was making an automatic knife that small, and due to that size, it was legal in more locations than most other autos. The first batch of Runts sold out at the first show. The Runt's level of success began moving Dave away from retail to production. The last resale products Dave let go were the custom knives, and he only did so grudgingly and allowed the Finer Points to dissolve. ProTech replaced the Finer Points in 1999 and started off with a small family production line where Dave would assemble the knives, his father would sharpen them, and his mother would clean, box, and ship them. During this time, it was just Dave and his father attending the blade shows and selling ProTech knives. The final step of ProTech's transition to full production was driven by supply issues in 2000. ProTech was still a relatively small fish, and it was a lower priority for its suppliers. The supplier for the Grunt scales prioritized a different job, and Dave ended up having to go to a knife show without any knives to sell. Shortly thereafter, ProTech purchased a Haas CNC machine. He told me that selling them is relatively easy, Making them is what's hard. He ended up learning how to run the machine, and after becoming proficient enough, he ended up purchasing a second-hand CNC to keep up with production. This early period was still very much a family operation. Dave's grandfather would come and sit in the shop and keep an eye on the workers to make sure that they were actually doing their job. When Protec hired their first programmer, Dave's grandfather was concerned that he was just spending all of his day at the computer instead of working. But Protec wasn't able to grow as only a family operation. So, more people were brought on board. As Protec began to expand, the company would constantly continue to upgrade its machines and tooling and always constantly refine their processes. While the Runt model was what kicked off the whole show, it is not the only knife that Protec makes. Much of Protec's market was law enforcement, and due to the growing demand in that market, the tactical response line was created. There were two variations, the TR1, which featured a Tonto tip, and the TR2, which featured a drop point tip. These would naturally evolve into the updated TR3, TR4, and TR5 blades that are still made today. The Duke model was released around 2001 as Protec's gentleman knife. This model was the first to see the signature custom work that Protec is known for. Protec began experimenting with Damascus blades, engraving, and exotic grip materials. This would bleed off into essentially all of Protec's models. Even the TR models, originally aimed at law enforcement, have blinged out versions available. Protec began to actively engage in creating different variants of each model. While a black blade and grip is cool, why not upgrade to a polished bevel, mother of pearl button, and a blue anodized grip? The Godfather model, also released in 2001, was based upon the classic Italian switchblade and was a huge hit for the company. It took the aesthetics of the Italian style and upgraded it to a modern and more practical blade. The follow-up model in 2003, the Godson, was a smaller version of the Godfather and also performed extremely well. Of all the various models that Protec makes, these are the two that have the most upgraded variants. Protec's Dawn model, the cousin of the Godfather model, was Protec's first knife to win an award at the Atlanta Blade Show in 2010, and a high-end Godfather variant was what won Protec Investor Collector Knife of the Year at Atlanta in 2015. The most recent entry into Protec's offerings is the Malibu, and it is currently their best-selling knife. Ironically, for a knife company that specializes in automatic knives, the Malibu is not an auto, but rather a manual flipper. Feedback from Protec customers, particularly those in California, asked for a manual Protec knife. As a result, the Malibu was developed and featured the classic flipper opening with a button lock that Protec has been making since the beginning. Protec themselves did not expect the Malibu to really succeed, but it has blown all other models out of the water. All stock knives sent to retailers like Blade HQ sell out in literal minutes after they are posted. The Malibu was also the knife that won Protec Overall Knife of the Year for the Atlanta Blade Show in 2022. In addition to completely original blades, Protec specializes in collaborations with custom makers. The relationships that Dave built in the early The Finer Points days of selling custom knives has allowed him to work with some of the best custom knife makers and designers in the world. Some examples of these are Bob Trzula, Matthew Lurch, Jeff Harkins, and so on. Protec also makes use of custom craftsmen to work on their collector's knives as well. High-end variants will have custom engravings or inlays done by hand. Bruce Shaw, Wade Oliver Wilson, and Julie Warensky are some of the engravers they have worked with. These knives have been known to sell for over $10,000. Today, Protec boasts a rather impressive production facility utilizing CNC milling, 5-axis grinders, laser engraving and cutting, wire EDM, and robotic automation. In spite of this, Protec often has troubles keeping up with demand for its knives. Protec's business model has always been that of slow and steady growth. This has helped it to endure through tough financial times such as 2008, little the worse for wear. Since its creation, Protec has moved 4 times to larger facilities and at minimum doubled its production capabilities each time. Dave Wattenberg himself told me that they had doubled their production capability in 2022 alone. Although the reasons have changed, ProTech's main problem still remains that selling knives is easy, it's making them that's hard. In addition to upscaling production, ProTech is also working on growing past their current capabilities. So, what comes next for ProTech? Well, they have a couple of cool things coming up in 2023. They will be relaunching an updated version of the PT Strider called the PT Plus. It will have a larger firing spring than the previous incarnation, with a slightly larger blade and frame to match. They will also be relaunching their full-sized Rockeye Auto as well, but with the option for aluminum bronze grips. And finally, ProTech will be revealing a brand new collaboration knife at the Atlanta Blade Show as well. Keep an eye out for the new knife at Blade Show if you can make it, and check out BladeHQ.com to pick up any of these new knives when they become available. Oh, and by the way, you can find any of the ProTech models shown in this video for sale at BladeHQ.com. After playing with a couple of ProTech's knives, I might end up having to pick up a couple of these myself. If you have questions about ProTech or their knives, leave them in the comments and we will see what we can do to get them answered. And also let us know what knife company's history you would like to see next. Stay safe and thanks for watching.